What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. We are officially on day 11 of New York Jets training camp, and the theme of today's training camp is throwing hands. Multiple skirmishes, fights, heated arguments went on today, and it's about time. I mean, realistically, I feel like in most off seasons, within the first 7 practices or so, we've seen it. But I think with the smell of blood in the water, Thursday brings the Commanders finally a different color jersey, different color helmet that you can try to split open. Is on the horizon, right? And teams are tired, it's like siblings. You get tired of seeing them on the day-to-day basis. You already know what's coming, what's going to irritate you about whatever's going to occur. And so the good news is Robert Saleh and the team, they were able to break up a lot of these fights pretty quickly, even though there was a few different pileups with a multitude of players and things. The de-escalation process worked effectively, and after about the 3 or 4 rounds that occurred, there was nothing else to really speak of. And I think CJ Mosley held his own meeting alongside of Robert Saleh right after. So ultimately, we heard Quincy talk, and everybody understands the theme of things is that these are okay up to a certain element. I think there's only one that I heard that may have potentially become dangerous and scary, and we'll get into that here in a moment. So what happened with these fights? For one, we had Joe Tippmann versus Marcelino McCrary-Ball, our undrafted free agent linebacker from last year. Now, this was their second time butting heads together. Initially, Marcelino had, tackled or pushed Valade pretty rough into the ground after, a late hit from the sideline. This prompted on the next play Tippmann and Marcelino to get into it. And then later there was some chippiness between Garrett Wilson and DJ Reed. And honestly, I think this is just one of those days where Garrett Wilson, in one of the rare instances, kind of had the handcuffs put on him all day, and we'll chat about that later. And I think he just wasn't feeling it, right? The offense as a whole wasn't necessarily humming. Once again, this was a defense-dominated practice, and we know how Garrett Wilson feels when the offense starts to hit a lull. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little PTSD there, right? The moment you start hitting 1 or 2 series where there's an immense amount of struggles, you start having flashbacks to Zach Wilson and Mike White and Trevor Siemian and Chris Streveler and all these other guys before you jump back into reality of realizing you have Aaron Rodgers, you have an elite defense that you guys are going with, but you always have a chance to stay in the game and turn it around. So outside of that, I did hear, so ultimately, if you guys are keeping tabs, Garrett Wilson, DJ Reed, Joe Tippmann, Marcelino McCrary-Ball, Xavier Valade, and then Brady Latham was the other name that I heard involved. Brady Latham, the undrafted free agent guard, I believe out of Arkansas, and he had his helmet snatched off him at some point. So he would have been, that face would have been open to receiving all of the hands and feet that they could get, but luckily everybody held the safety standards, and it didn't get any scarier than that for him. So that's a plus, right? Love me a good fight. Anybody that's participating in sports doesn't even have to be at a official level, high school, college, pro, etc. If you've been on a team sport, then undoubtedly you're getting into something, right? My basketball people, the LA Fitness, EOS Fitness, Warriors, you guys, it is what it is, right? That's such is life. Other news, let's get into our housekeeping items. The deep ball today was basically non-existent, and we'll touch base on that. Xavier Gipson returns after having about a week or so away from his leg injury. Tyron Smith was out technically for team drills. He did participate in individual drills. Ashton Davis left early with a rib injury, and we're pending an MRI evaluation to figure out the depth of the injury there. And then MC2, Michael Carter II, still out dealing with his ankle. Hopefully we see him in about an ankle or so, but I never want to rush anybody. Me dealing with a ton of ankle injuries in my history, never really want to rush anybody back from one of those, because it takes a long time just for something to feel normal, long after you're even able to put pressure on there. So rest up. More power to him. I'm sure we will see him hopefully after the Commanders practice, if nothing else, right? I think he's missed about 3 or so practices now. But on field work, Aaron Rodgers did not have himself a great day by any means. 11 of 21 in team periods with a sack. Had to settle for the short pass game pretty consistently. If you guys remember yesterday's report, a lot of dink and ducking. That's exactly what occurred again today. The defensive line was feasting out there when it came to beating up on the offensive line. And so we'll call out all the standouts here shortly. But ultimately, what I take away from this is that we've seen Aaron Rodgers not get over anxious, I guess is the best way to put it, when it comes to not being able to maybe target certain area of the fields that he wants due to the pressure in his face, and he's just trying to find whatever the defense is allowing for him to get. And don't get a mistaken here. There are plenty of plays on the table for Aaron Rodgers, but that's usually not the fancy stuff people want to see. They want to see the back shoulder throws like we got the call out. They want to see the 60-yard bombs and the lasers to the middle of the field. That just wasn't on consistent display today. In a wrinkle, we seen Tyrod lead the first team offense in the what I've quoted as the gotta have it period, right? You're down a touchdown or 3 points and you have to essentially go the length of the field. Tyrod was able to take the team to field goal range starting from the 30-yard line today. So that was a pretty huge plus to cap off the first string unit. Adrian Martinez was able to make himself a bit of a highlight play today. Targeted Dearborn native, so a guy that Salah would be somewhat familiar with, and I believe he mentioned this when there was initial chatter about the undrafted free agent class we brought in. But wide receiver Hamza El-Zayat made the biggest play of the day, and literally the biggest, right? Most yards on the field. Had himself a major sideline grab courtesy of the UFL MVP here. So glad to see that. Hamza, it's not even a name that I'm just seeing for the first time either. It hasn't been any noticeable, highlight worthy stuff necessarily going on, but it seems like he makes a handful of catches pretty consistently throughout all of these practices, and so still probably a practice squad guy, right? A number of guys with at least name recognition for the Jets fans ahead of him, but he could be an interesting developmental piece on the practice squad. Breece Hall, I can't wait for the season to see what this man does. Longest run of the day and one of his best runs. Started off practice with a huge run down the sideline. With Aaron Rodgers in the passing offense struggling, there was multiple opportunities for Rodgers to flip him the ball, turn those into at least some positive gains, and then he's had a number of plays attacking the middle of the defense with some Quincy Williams blitzes going on and different things of that nature. But there was a long play that potentially would have went for a touchdown, according to what I was able to dig up. Garrett Wilson, G5. He had himself a rough day. We'll talk about the flip side of this with DJ Reed, but really the biggest piece here is that one of his few opportunities to make something big happen for the offense, and something that people will call out as a low light of his career so far with the New York Jets, is the lack of deep play or deep ball big play passes, right? He can break off the little stuff and turn it into large gains, but you haven't consistently seen him attack the deep part of the field, and a lot of that has to do with the quarterback, so it is what it is, but just something to be on notice for. Al Lazard, same situation, one of the few big plays that could have happened deep. He bottled a deep pass out of bounds from Rodgers, did bounce back later for Tyrod, where he had some consecutive passes in that gotta have it drill to march his team down the field. Gibson, returning from his leg injury, caught several passes I heard today, was pretty open consistently, a theme from OTAs, where he's been able to pretty much decimate zone coverage for the New York Jets so far. So love seeing him come back and have a strong day in his injury return debut. And then Morgan Moses, one of the lowest lowlights of the offensive side today. He was called out as being beaten by multiple guys. Michael Clemens, Will McDonald, Eric Watts, to name some of the major ones that all were able to have winning reps against him. So maybe a blip on the radar. He's still really working himself back and trying to, refine his technique and different things like that to fit the scheme, but something to take note of. Flipping to the defense, though, again, as I mentioned, the defensive line 8, Javon Kinlaw, Will McDonald, Braden McGregor turns things back on. So does Eric Watts, two of the most impressive undrafted free agents of training camp and really the entire offseason so far. But this was essentially a game where they were getting pressures and impact plays pretty much the entirety of practice. We know Kinlaw seems like he's been able to get himself at least a pass breakup every other practice or so. It feels like, I believe he actually had 2 or 3 the last 2 or 3 consecutive days, well, 1 each across those days, right? Watts would have had himself a sack against Tyrod. McDonald was actually called out as the best rusher of the day, and this was courtesy of Nick Faria that I've seen drop some updates for me. Potential multiple sacks outing today. Plenty of pressures, again, really kind of beat up on Morgan Moses here from my understanding for a lot of these reps. But this is one of those, hopefully this isn't a blip on the radar, right? But this is that start of the flame that you hope just turns into an inferno for Will McDonald's second year in the system. Saleh has highlighted that Will McDonald should really start to flash and come on consistently once the pads have come on. And it's been a slow start, but these last few practices have sounded and looked really, really good for McDonald. Trace Willing, cornerback, he got himself a pass breakup today. And then DJ Reed, handcuffs, lock up. G5 was he was in a cage today. Finally, DJ Reed wins the majority of his matchups against Garrett Wilson. I think that is, again, a lot of the reason that led to some of these fights. But it was good to see DJ Reed have a bounce back performance like this, because I can recall, and there's not many of these games, but the Cowboys stick out as one of the biggest ones, right? Where he got ate up by CeeDee Lamb, which is another guy that has shades and elements of the game Garrett Wilson plays. The Cowboys just did a better job of being able to motion and shift things around and really kind of target Reed. But Reed, there's a reason why we call him, 1A and the 1B to Sauce Gardner's 1A, in that he is essentially another cornerback, 1 for us. So couldn't be more than happy for him. Tomorrow is a walkthrough, so we'll see if there's anything to really touch on tomorrow. Or Wednesday, sorry, by the time you guys are seeing this. But nonetheless, looking forward to Thursday. I will see if I can tap in with somebody from the Commander side and give us some pointers from what they were seeing on things as well. But appreciate you guys tuning in, supporting, etc. And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.